Oh, wait a minute. Can you see me?
I can see you and I can hear you.
My dogs. Lord, hold on one second here. Let me see I don't know what to do. Here I am.
Hello. Are you here? Yes, you are, and that's good, because we have a very special gift for you today. But before we get going, please, if you would, hit the subscribe button and don't hesitate to tell a friend about this episode. Now, those of you who have been here from the beginning probably know that your host, Paul Leslie, began broadcasting on Jimmy Buffett's Radio Margaritaville. Now, what nobody knew then was how many characters and stories from that world would end up being documented right here. Countless. Well, today's guest has likely known Jimmy Buffett longer than any person alive. This is his sister, Laurie Buffett McGuane, or as her family calls her, Lala. From her beautiful ranch in Montana, Laurie joins us for a candid interview where she speaks from the heart about her life, her husband, the author Thomas McGuane, and her family, including her late brother, Jimmy Buffett. It's the first long-form interview Laurie offers since Jimmy's passing, and that's precious. So let's listen together.
If the UPS man comes, the dogs will go crazy, but I'm sorry.
I love it when dogs come into the set.
Okay, good.
It
How are you,
always,
Paul?
oh, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Fine. I've had a long day on the ranch and it's like, oh, it's time to get ready.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on here, and I know that everybody watching and listening, they appreciate it too.
Oh, that's nice. That's very nice. Yeah, I don't do this. Everybody else in my family is in front of a screen or a microphone, but I'm kind of right here on the ranch.
Right. And you know, that is something that I don't take lightly. I appreciate it when somebody who's a little more reserved, or whatever you want to call it, when they agree to speak.
Oh, well, in real life, well, here comes my dog. In real life, I'm not that reserved, but in front of a microphone, I kind of am. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Actually, I think I'll be fine.
Great. Well, I think most stories are best from the beginning.
Okay.
What would you say life was like growing up?
Well, it'll be very interesting. Probably Jimmy, Lulu, and I have different. I'm the middle child. Growing up, both our parents worked. We went to Catholic school. We had a very modest home, but we were always busy and always doing a lot. I was the horse girl, thus I'm on a ranch. Jimmy was out and about, being the oldest one, and Lulu, 5 years younger than us, had a different perspective. But both parents worked. We always had fun. We always went over the bay. It was pretty much Americana, I guess, is the best way of putting it. Pretty much.
You were born in Mobile?
I was born in Pascagoula as well.
Oh, okay.
But Lulu was born in Mobile.
Okay.
I was born, I think how the story goes, I think they had already moved to Mobile, but my mother had a doctor in Pascagoula, and where Jimmy was born, Singing River Hospital, she went back to have me, and maybe she did with him too. They went back and forth, and then they were settled in Mobile by the time Lulu was born.
Interesting.
Yes. And I have a dog right here on my lap.
Well, a dog makes any interview better. I know that for sure. Tell us about your mother and father. One memory I have from going to Lulu's was this wonderful thing from your mother, the rules for living.
Oh, Pete's philosophy.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, it was my mother was the scholarly type, and she was very smart. She was ahead of her time. She back then she worked as a secretary for an administrator at Alabama Dry Dock. But truth be told, she could have run the whole show.
Hmm.
She just hardworking. Her mother from Gulfport, Mississippi, was a very cultured person. My grandmother on the Pete side, not the Buffett side. She worked for Dwight Eisenhower in the Pentagon. She was a dietitian at this girls' finishing school in Mississippi, and which enabled my mother and her sisters to attend the college there. So that was that side of the family. And it was just and Daddy, of course, was the seafaring family, the explorers, whatnot. And it was a good combination. It really was. And they worked so blooming hard. They really did, to make our lives, like all parents do, better for the next generation. But very smart. And when my mother retired from her job, she went back to school and got her degree. She'd always wanted to do that in English literature. So that's kind of Petesy, hardworking. The most important thing about her, which I've told my children and grandchildren, she was very fair-minded. I'm not as fair-minded as she is, but but when she died, Ed Bradley Jimmy's friend, Ed, did her eulogy. And one of the things he picked up on was all of us had been married before, and she maintained the relationship with all the exes and the future children of the exes, you name it. And Ed Bradley said, I'll never forget, he said, I just don't know how to explain Petesy, because she was, this would have been my ex's wife, Noreen, was in the church just crying her eyes out. And this is just that, because she was so inclusive. And I love that. And I try to do that with our many, many blended families that we have.
I've had a number of people who've told me about her through the years, and it's been interesting. The people, it surprised me sometimes, people that knew her or bumped into her and had different stories. There's something your sister Lucy told me. This is a direct quote. She said, "Food's a big, important thing in our family, honey." Did you all eat together? Did you have the traditional family dinner as it's?
We had traditional Sundays because they were working, and food was important. And I'd say if Jimmy, Lulu, and I'm digressing now, but if we had a lot of things, we have so much in common, but it's our love of the Gulf Coast cuisine for sure. So Daddy, to this day, Daddy was potato salad. He makes the best potato salad in the world. Mashed potatoes, roast beef, fried chicken. That was our Sundays, English peas. And so we always did on Sundays. And of course, when we went to the grandparents, food was a huge part of our makeup, I should say. But Lulu took it to the all the way, because she's a fabulous chef.
Oh, definitely.
You know her history. And Jimmy, I will say, this is an interesting story. When we were up there to say goodbye, and there was a chef up there, and my sister Lulu brought gumbo for Bubba. And the chef there said, when they were hiring this guy, I can't remember his name now, that the first thing that Jimmy had him make was gumbo, to see if he would, and I think it was maybe something to do with grits too, but I thought, oh yeah, of course, that's what he would want. That's the test in our family.
It's interesting you were mentioning at the beginning there. It's true, your brother and your sister have been more in the public eye, but you have been more not so much enjoying more the behind the scenes. Why would you say that that's the case?
Well, part of it is, I guess, geographically, really. I mean, I live outside of a town of 6, and then 15 miles from a town of 1,500. So it's not like people pop in and pop out, or I get to some place, or, I'll run into a lot of people, and I have an eclectic group of friends for sure. And every now and then when Tom would publish a book, or when he was in the movie business, I would maybe answer a question or two here and there, but that was okay with me. That was really okay with me. I'm like I said, I'm a blabbermouth. So but it's just as far as they had that down when Tom's promoting a book, or of course, Bubba knows how to entertain the world. And my sister Lulu and my children are very good at this too. And Savannah is incredible at this. So it just never kind of came up in a way. Or if somebody would come do interviews, I might be out with the horses. I don't know if you've seen the movie All That Is Sacred, the documentary.
No,
Oh,
not
well,
yet.
I'll send it to you. This is the documentary that takes place. Well, it was chronicling Tom's life, and then it segued down to Key West, and Jimmy and Carl Heiss and all these people were interviewed. And it's about Key West in the 70s, fishing, friendship, creating art. And Scott Blue, this friend of ours, was the director, and it filmed at the Key West Film Festival and Telluride and a couple other places. So it hasn't been distributed yet, but you would find that interesting. And I'm actually in that. They interviewed me because I kept saying no, no, no. And anyway, so I made my debut there.
Oh, well, I'll definitely look forward to that. Tell us about the place you live. This is a part of the country that a lot of people are fascinated by. They go and they
Yes.
come back. Montana, Wyoming, that area.
Yes. Well, I live in Southwest Montana. I live between, if you know the geography, Livingston and Billings. I live outside of a town called Big Timber, and my town is called McLeod. It's 23, I live 25 miles from Big Timber. When I first moved to Montana, we lived on a ranch outside of Livingston, Montana. But it all came about because Tom was a Wallace Stegner Fellow at Stanford, and he was a fishing nut, and he had a little bit of a stipend left from this fellowship, and he started driving, and he ended up in Livingston, I think, because he ran out of money, and he wanted to start a career and working for Sports Illustrated, all these other people. That's how he ended up in Montana. And then he eventually lived in the Paradise Valley. And when we were married 46 years ago, I think, I lived in Livingston in the Paradise Valley, and our older kids were in school there. But Tom always wanted to live on a river. So this ranch is on the West Boulder River, and it's about over 2,000 acres, and it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. However, growth has happened, and we have neighbors here and there. But that's why I said if the UPS man comes, the dogs will go crazy, because we don't see very many people. I absolutely love it, because I was a horse girl even when I lived in Alabama, and to be out on a ranch, have my own horses, work with the cattle, work with all that is just what I was built to do.
You were built to do it. What is it about the equestrian world? What is it that fascinates you?
Well, I came by it kind of innocently and honestly. When we were growing up in Mobile, there's two sisters had a riding stable. And I don't even remember how we ended up there, but I know Jimmy and I took lessons, and it was about a mile from the house, maybe. And we lived it was kind of the suburbs then, but it was just beginning of suburbs, and there was a lot of trails and open land. And we all rode, we all know how to ride, we all love to ride. But I took it the next step. I became the person that just, for some reason, I just loved going to the stables every Saturday and taking riding. And then I rode hunter jumpers, I rode all kinds of horses. Then at college, I rode a few polo horses, and then there was a gap. And then suddenly my life with Tom began, and I thought, I can't believe this. I'm going to Montana to ride horses again. And I took that up, and Tom and I both competed, oh gosh, I don't know how many years, for National Cutting Horse Association. We both competed, and we went all over the West with our horses. And he's in the Hall of Fame, which is pretty interesting, among other things.
Definitely. Definitely.
Mhm.
Well, we just interviewed Mr. Tom McGuane. Uh,
Yes.
Tell us, who is the real Tom McGuane? What's something interesting about him? Because he's just downright interesting.
Oh God, that is a toughie. Who's the real one? The real one, he would tell, I mean, he might laugh at this. The real Tom McGuane, well, first of all, he's just so gifted. I mean, I'm in awe. I've the new book of short stories is coming out, and he finally, after I don't know how many years, he's written about his life in Michigan and his family life. And I was just thunderstruck by it. It's just so beautiful, so beautiful. So he just has that gift, but he's not like your typical writer. I don't know what people think of writers. Maybe kind of hold up, kind of antisocial, smoking a pipe, whatever they think of him. Tom's not like that. He is just a normal guy. Like, right now, he's probably out casting his fly rod, or he might go take the dogs for a walk, or he might, whatever's going on. We've had a lot of work going on today, and he's just been out there talking to all the people. He doesn't. He loves to learn from people. So that's just a writer in him, but would be something that no one would suspect. Hard to say, because everything's pretty much been chronicled, but I'll think on that one. I'll get back to you on that one.
He's certainly put a lot of words to paper, that's for sure.
Oh my gosh, yes. And he loves it this minute. He loves words, he loves writing, he loves literature. He loves literature more than anything.
I want you to take us back when your older brother, Jimmy, was first embarking on this career in music.
Mhm.
What did you think of that? What did you feel about that, him going off and pursuing that?
Well, let me think here. So I don't know. I've read a lot about Bubba these last few months, but both Jimmy and I went to Auburn. And as the story goes, he learned how to play the guitar at Auburn with his fraternity brothers. I was younger, so I wasn't there. I don't think when he left, but the the story in our family, everybody has a story in families. Is my father, when Jimmy had to leave Auburn, and then he went to Pearl River Junior College, and my father said, "I didn't send you to college to learn how to play a damn guitar." So that's our running joke, haha, in the family. I do remember very distinctly, and we actually talked about this when I was up in New York to see him. I went to Bourbon Street with Mama and Daddy, and Jimmy at that time was at Southern Mississippi, and he had his little band, the Upstairs Alliance, and we thought, well, that's cute, what's old Bubba up to now? He's just playing guitar. And he said, well, and he was playing gigs on the weekend at this place called the Gunga Den. And so, of course, Mom and Daddy, we had to go see what was going on. And I think Lulu must have been too young because she couldn't have gotten in. So we went there, and let me tell you, it was a dive. I was kind of nervous, and Mom got looking around. But I guess this is what I love about my family. We just assumed he was going to do something. We didn't know what, we didn't know how, but we thought this is very cool. And when I look back on it, I mean, he stood up there in front of this audience of, I don't know, winos, drunks, whatever, played his 4 songs. They throw beer bottles at him. They do all kinds of things. He was just happy to be there, just happy to be there. And when we were talking to him up in New York before we lost him, I was mentioning something about the Gunga Den. And I said, that place next door where the girls, the strippers, whatever, they swing out, like they do in Amsterdam. He stopped for a second. He said, I dated one. And I went, oh my God, now you're telling the whole story. So I guess my parents were devoted. My mother was so proud. My father was so proud. It just was sort of a natural thing that happened. And I do remember Tom was teaching at Stanford. This is way early in the career. And Jimmy was playing somewhere around Palo Alto. Tom was teaching a 6-week course, writing course or something. And we went to the show. And this is when he had a band and things were starting to move a little bit. I don't think it was before Margaritaville, but I'll never forget. I've forgotten a lot, but I'll never forget this because this is a side of him I didn't know. And we'd be out there and we were on the little side backstage or something. He'd come off for a break and he'd say to whoever was in the band, he'd say, "You need to step up front. You're a little bit off key. You need to look out here." And I thought, oh my God, he's managing this band besides singing. And that was something that we didn't know about. And that was his gift and his part of his story that I saw from the beginning.
Very interesting.
Isn't it?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's occurring to me that several of his songs have a kind of connection to that part of the country that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Livingston's Gone to Texas, Ringling Ringling.
Mm-hmm. I listen to those a lot.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is there a particular song of your brother's that you would say has great personal significance?
I like Wonder Why We Ever Go Home. That's from Rancho Deluxe. That's
right.
one of my favorites. Oh God, I have so many. In fact, I have to tell JD Spratling, I have ideas all the time. And I said, we need to get Lulu and I and the kids and do a song list that we like, because I couldn't listen to Radio Margaritaville for 2 months, probably at least after we lost him. I just couldn't do it. And then I started and he played some of the oldies and I thought, oh my God, these are some of my favorites. They're mostly the ballads and 2 or 3 from the new album, but they're mostly from A1A. And now you put me on the spot. I listen to them all the time, but it's the ballads that I love because I love the poetry of the writing. That's what I love about it. And they are definitely telling it's his song line. It's his story.
I've said before that Wonder Why We Ever Go Home, that's his finest song from the 70s. It's just beautiful.
So we're on the same page.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. And he was Tom, I don't know if Tom told this story when they were pitching him. Well, Tom was a young film star. They wanted him to do Rancho Deluxe, et cetera, et cetera. And then they brought Bubba in. I can't remember where they were, maybe in New York. And somehow they said, "Do you have any songs?" Sure. And he just went out and he just did a wing it. And he got the job to do the music for Rancho, which, again, some of my favorites.
You are a survivor of pancreatic cancer.
Yes, I am. 4
And
years.
It's something, nobody ever predicts something like that's going to happen.
No.
But going through having this experience and going alongside it with your brother, was there anything that he said to you through that time that you kept in mind?
Oh,
you could
yes.
share?
I don't want to get weepy. Oh, yes. We talked a lot because, well, I'll share some things I won't share now, but one day I'll share some really cool, interesting things. But when he was going through I think he had just finished radiation, and I was down in Florida, and he called and he said, "I'm done, Lala." And I said, "Oh, thank God, thank God, thank God." So we were celebrating, Well, that 2 days before, I'd had like a pain in my side, and my good friend had said, who's a nurse at the time, she said, "Just go get that checked out. You might have I thought I had a runner's stitch or something." And she said, "You might have adhesions or something, scar tissue or something." And I said, "Okay, I will." Well, the day that Bubba called me and told me he was through with his radiation, I get a phone call from the doctor, and she said, I'd had a CAT scan, because she said, "Let's just check this out." And I said, "Fine." I had thought nothing of it. And she said that. And of course, I was blindsided, thunderstruck, because, well, let's be honest. Everybody I knew who'd ever had pancreatic cancer is gone now, especially this young man who was a good friend of my daughter's. And I thought, oh my God, this is terrible. So I called Lulu and I said, "I can't ruin Bubba's happiness over finishing his radiation." And I said, "I just can't tell him. I can't tell him now." And so the phone rings about 30 minutes later, and he calls. He said, "Okay, Lala, are you trying to upstage me?" So that was the beginning of our journey. And we would call each other prior to our scans, scan anxiety, they call it. And I'd write him, he'd write me, and I'd say, "Oh God, here it comes." You could time it by 5 days prior. And every time, sometimes it would be humorous because Lulu would say, "He doesn't call you." And I said, "Let me tell you something, sister. He and I are in a simple club that nobody wants to be in.
Hmm.
And only we know what it feels like when they roll you in that scan and roll you back out, and then you're waiting for the results." And I said, "It's just kind of creepy and it's very frightening." So you want to talk, I only wanted to talk to survivors when I was first diagnosed. I said, "I don't want to hear the bad stuff." And so we would talk, we would call, and he would write me, and he was Mr. Positive. And that is no exaggeration, whatever anybody's written about him. But there were some times when we were both very fragile and we kind of leaned on each other. And the first time I had to do a scan without him was pretty tough for me because I was always checking in on him. And of course, Tom was my savior. He helped me through all of this, and my entire family. Oh my God. But we had that in common. We were going through it at the same time. We would send pictures of each other with our IVs. I say, "Oh, look, I'm having chemo." And he said, "Oh, look, I'm having immunotherapy." And we'd screenshot him while we're sitting in the chair. Humor, you got to have it. It's Black humor, but we did it. So that was very, very important. And it's very lonely and very emotional when I get my scans, not for whatever, not for that. It's because he's not there. But now he is there, because the last time I wore a scarf that was his, that Jane gave me. And the time before that, I wore one of his t-shirts. And so I also wore my grandson's t-shirts because I lost my grandson. And so I'm we're voodoo people. I believe in symbolism. Lulu was always lighting candles for us, and we were writing each other all the time. She said, "My voodoo candles are burning for you too." So that's how we got through it. That's how we got through it.
And you would say a positive attitude was
Oh, yes.
hmm,
Yes. And boy, he sure had it. When I was down, he'd pull me back up. And I don't think he was really down till kind of maybe toward the end. And it kind of shocked him that he was actually feeling down because he's never down.
hmm,
And I said, "Oh, interesting. You're having a moment like we all do."
hmm.
So that's kind of how we did that. But I think when you're going through cancer treatment like that, you're just hanging on for whatever positive. And Tom was always my positive person, and my children, my family. We're blessed. We're really, all families have stuff. But when push comes to shove, our whole family pulled hard for each other.
A lyric from your brother has gone through my head
Yes.
quite a few times, and that is, "There's still so much to be done."
Mm-hmm.
And I was at the dog park today, and I was thinking about how we were going to talk, and I was thinking, here's a man who was born in Mississippi and ends up doing a duet with Frank Sinatra.
I know. I love that one. Mhm.
Ends up having Paul McCartney from the
Yep.
Beatles be on his record, ends
Yes.
up writing hundreds of songs, ends up being one of the few people that's on the New York Times bestseller list for fiction and nonfiction,
Yes.
all in one life.
Hmm.
It's astonishing, but is there,
Beyond astonishing to
yeah,
us. Hmm.
was there anything left undone? Was there any dream that he had that was still on the horizon that you know of?
Well, you know, I don't think let me think about this. I don't think he thought in terms of, "I've got to finish this, finish that." He was always so much in motion. I think he thought he was going to live forever. We did too. He was creative till the bitter end. In fact, the 2 days before we lost him, he played his whole album and he was so into it, and he was rearranging the songs. He was so into life and creativity and new things. Yes, he could get another boat, another this. The one thing I do know, because my niece Melanie, Lulu's daughter, here they go. was supposed to go on a trip to South Africa. And she didn't know what to do. Should I go after losing uncle? And of course, we all said, of course you go, because Bubba would want you to go. And she talked to him about that. And he said that's one place he hadn't been where she was going. I think he's been to Africa. And he said, you have a great time. You have a great time. So travel was in his DNA, exploring new places. My grandson Beckett was getting ready to go on a ship the semester at sea. And Jimmy was so happy about that because he had lost his brother. I'd lost my grandchild. My daughter had lost her son. And Beckett was an only child. And he was fixated on that. And he was fixated on the fact that the sea was going to help him. And he actually wrote Beckett a letter telling him all about the Buffetts and the seafaring Buffetts. And we couldn't find the letter. And Mike Ramos, Jimmy's aide de camp for 40 years and dear friend, I kept saying, Ramos, you got to find that letter. I have to send it to Beckett before he gets on the ship because we will be out of contact with him. And the day before Beckett was supposed to set sail in Antwerp, headed to somewhere, I can't remember where, Malaga maybe, Ramos found the letter. And I sent it to my daughter in Antwerp and for Beckett to read. And it was game changing because whatever he said in that letter about travel meant the world to Beckett. And it was a catalyst for being out and about. And so those kinds of things, when I say what undone, just continuing. Feel so gypped. Even we lost him at 76. I thought, oh my God, his parrot heads, they need more. We need more. The world needs more because we're such a dark place. And that was his motto was he wants to make his people happy. And that would be the only thing undone was continuing the joy. I'd say this is all off the cuff. So
it's a great answer. What can people learn from Jimmy Buffett still?
Well, just probably what I said, which is explore, learn, be brave. I would have to say what you were talking about, what his accomplishments, it is this astonishing is not even the word. It's like Herculean in my mind, because as we were talking to him, Lulu and I, and Lulu said something to me, which shook me. She said, Lala, I said, Bubba, Lulu just told me that I've known you longer than anyone on the planet. And which was true. And I thought, my God. And I've said this to people, or maybe I said that on my Instagram post. We talked about things from our childhood that even wives and children didn't get, I got it because I was the next in line, youngest to him, but we both got kind of from whence we came. And if you knew him in high school, people would say, there's no way. So what we can learn is it's the old cliche, follow your dreams. But this was like beyond that. It was explore, learn. How did he come up with these stories? How did he come up? He had the stories. I have a picture of Tom and Jimmy from the 70s when he and Jane, and I think Savannah was a baby, came to the ranch in Livingston. And there's a picture of Tom and Jimmy has a big stack of books under his arm. And Love in the Library is one of my favorites too. But I just thought, how did this kid from shipyard parents?
On the note of joy, in the interview with Lucy, she said, live well.
No.
How do you think people can do that?
I'm so blooming old now, but I think it's first of all, I think people can have many careers. I think you can change. We've talked about a lot. Live well is really by enjoying where you live, what you do. And I'm not a perfect at this. Of course, with all the political stuff, I'm nervous. But take a walk, and if you're going to look for morels, like we're having morels for dinner, look at those twigs, look at those branches, listen to the birds, just live, and you'll just be a happier person. I can't remember the name of the book now. My friend Meredith Brokaw gave it to me, about really understanding your surroundings and making the most of them. And I'm so incredibly lucky to have Mother Nature as my backyard. But you can do it in a walk up in New York. You just have to figure out the flower stands or the way you go get your, whatever you do, your coffee. Just live well that way.
Well spoken. Well, I always like to end the interview. I just let the guest have the last word.
God.
I've been hearing from people, especially if you want to talk Buffett fans, from Australia, from England, anything you'd like to say, no matter how or where this person's coming in from, in closing.
I would like to say thank you to all of those people, very much so, because that's the other incredible part. I mean, a lot of celebrities, musicians, actors have had huge fan bases, but never as loyal as the Parrot Heads. And I will be grateful to them forever. And I will close with, when was it? I think it was when things were we were a little bit nervous and Bubba's health was not so great. And I know what it was. He had to cancel some shows, and then he went to LA and he did those makeup shows, I want to say, in Palm Springs and Vegas, and I think Phoenix. So it was all the West Coast stuff. And he had some trouble. He'd been to the doctor in Los Angeles, and nobody knows this, but he had to have a surgical procedure. And I said, excuse me, you're getting ready to go do makeup shows and you've had this? And he said, Lala, those are my people. They've been with me forever. And he said, those are my people. He said, I can't let them down. And he went on that stage, and I went and YouTubed a couple of those shows. He gave unbelievable performances. And on one of them, he actually collapsed when he walked off the stage. Nobody knows that. Now they know. But he said, they're my people. They've been with me and I can't let them down. And then he said, when I'm done here, I'm going back for treatment. And that was that. So thank you all, everywhere, for all these years, 50 plus.
And Laurie Buffett McGuane, thank you so much. You've been a wonderful guest.
Oh, good. Just yank away.
I've enjoyed it so much.
You take care. I appreciate it.
All right. You have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you.
The sun has been coming up on Buffett's world for a long time, and among the shadows stand songs and people who are here to stay. Thomas McGuane. You know, the Paul Leslie Hour is made possible by people like you, listeners, viewers. Please go to thepaulleslie.com/support, and you'll know what to do when you're there. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who contributes. Performance of The Entertainer intro song by John Primorano. And of course, this is your announcer speaking. See you next time on the Paul Leslie Hour.